Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Oh my God. Yeah, I ran into 2 o'clock in the afternoon, bright sunny day during the summer. I was walking around in downtown Minneapolis, and I had an experience like that where I ran into something that I just absolutely cannot explain to this day.
What happened?
I was trying to get to a store before it was, summer, so hot. I was trying to get there before it got too hot in the afternoon, get done with my shop and get back again. And the streets are just packed. It was, as I recall, it was like a Saturday, it was a weekend. So there's tons of people walking up and down the streets. And this is the shopping district. And I'm walking down the street, and there's tons of people on the sidewalk. And I notice the side street that's going generally in the direction I want to go, there's nobody on it. And why that didn't occur to me that that was peculiar is in itself peculiar, because the street's packed. Both sidewalks, people going in every direction, packed. Right. This side street right here, there's nobody on it.
Huh.
So without thinking about it, because I'm just dumb that way, I went, I'll take advantage of this shortcut. I can cruise right up that sidewalk as fast as I want, no crowds in the way, and I'll be right over there to Target, no time flat. So as I'm going up the sidewalk, I start realizing that this is kind of peculiar. Why isn't there anybody else? Neither side of the street. There's no one. And as I'm going up the side of the street on the sidewalk I'm on, there's two figures that are coming toward me. And as I'm getting closer, I notice one of them is this little short person, and the other one is this really way too thin looking person that's about a head taller and has this very peculiar walk, very strange gait going back and forth like this. And I'm going, that's kind of weird looking. So as I get closer to him, the littler person turns out to be what looks like about a 5'0" granny. She looks exactly like the evil witch from Snow White. She's dressed up in the same kind of clothing and everything. So there's a theater district right there. So I'm thinking, okay, these are theater people. They're doing a show and they're just taking a break. They're going to get food or something, right? The guy that's walking next to her, when you can get closer, you can see that he's 5'5" maybe. And the reason he looks so thin is because he has no arms. And he's doing this weird twisting, shuffling side to side thing.
Because he can't swing his arms while he's walking.
Exactly. And there's a little chain around his neck, a little silver chain. And it's going to the hand of this evil witch looking person.
Oh my goodness.
Now I'm starting to get pretty creeped out. I'm like, okay, this is some really great makeup. I wonder what theater company that they came from and stuff. Now, when I'm about 20 feet away from them, I can see no matter how good the makeup is, this is just like way overkill. And the guy with no arms has no pupils in his eyes. They're just pure white.
Oh, man.
And he's kind of drooling.
Oh, man.
As he's shuffling along. And I'm like, now I'm right there. And I'm starting to think these are real. Because, nobody else on this street except for me. There's these weird looking people walking toward me, and I'm right there. And I got my bearded dragon with me, sitting on my shoulder. It's a nice warm day, and he's out for a walk with me. And all of a sudden, she just stops, and she looks up at me. And she gives me this look like, why are you on my sidewalk, and how can you see me? Extra creepy. So I take the dragon off my shoulder, thinking quickly, and hold it out and go, hey, I got a bearded dragon. And she focuses her attention on the dragon and she goes, lizards. I like little lizards. And she reaches out their finger and strokes the top of his head. And I'm just getting majorly creeped out. And I don't have much in the way of ability to sense paranormal stuff. Like some people are super psychic. I'm just the opposite. But at that moment, it hit me. What I was looking at in front of me wasn't what I was actually there. I had this image in my subconscious of something about 20 feet tall that was actually her, that was putting on this illusion. It was this little short granny.
Oh, my.
And nothing from the thing next to her. But anyway, so I held out the dragon. She said, I like the little lizard. And she pats him a little bit. And I said, well, have a nice day. And I kind of walked around her and the shambling corpse and kept going. And as I'm going past, she yanks on the chain and she goes, come along now. and they start going down the sidewalk, and he's shambling back and forth. And I took about 5 or 6 steps, and I'm just like, what the hell did I just see? And I turn around, they're not there.
Oh, Jesus.
The street's still completely deserted both directions, but they're not there. So yeah, that was when something like that happens to you in the middle of a bright sunny day in downtown, middle of a city, and you're like, okay, what did I just run into?
Yeah.
Well, I talked to one of my psychic friends about 3 days later and told them what happened, and you should have seen the look on their face. They looked like they were going to throw up, actually, because apparently they got a good psychic impression, and they said unequivocally, you accidentally ran into Baba Yaga. That was freaking
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I went and looked at some pictures and some legendary about Baba Yaga, and I went, oh, holy bleep. It all matches up exactly. Oh my God.
Wow.
She was there to collect someone that she, had a grudge against or something. And the walking corpse with a little silver chain on that she was leading around. And oh my God. So yeah, out of all the, running into Bigfoot in the woods and all that kind of stuff, not even close to being as scary as that. This was the ultimate scary. Like,
I bet.
Ever. That was absolutely terrifying. And I had a strong suspicion when I was looking at her after I realized that what I was visually seeing wasn't what was actually there. It was some much larger, incredibly evil thing that from my perspective was like leaning over, looking at me way down here because I'm little. But she's right there looking up at me. And I'm like, okay, this is really, really strange. Man, yeah, that was a freaking nightmare. That was a night terror right there during the day. Day terror.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and that's the only kind of weird psychic paranormal thing that I've had happen to me. And I camp in ghost towns and stuff, and nothing happens to me when I'm there. The ghosts all go somewhere else and just leave me alone. Like maybe they go, he's already seen Baba Yaga. There's nothing we can do to scare him. Just give up on it. But yeah, that was very terrifying, and it occurred to me as I had this impression that this isn't what I'm seeing in front of me isn't actually what is here. And I at that time knew a little bit about the legend of Baba Yaga, and that popped into my head. And in all the legends, I was referred to her as Little Mother. So when she got done petting the lizard and I was getting ready to walk away, I almost said, "Have a nice day, Little Mother."
Oh, wow.
Thank God I didn't say that. Because then she would have right away known that I knew who she actually was. And whoa, bad things.
She has another chain for your neck, buddy.
Yeah, that was quick thinking there. Wait, don't use her actual name, even if that is her especially. Don't use it. There are these legends about her eating heroes and stuff like that, cannibal witch, et cetera, et cetera. But apparently I didn't know at the time that she's considered to be one of the forest goddesses that some of the witches actually worship.
Oh, really?
So she's still actively being worshipped by some of the witchcraft covens and whatnot. Okay. Yeah, and there's a ton load of witches in Minneapolis, which could explain why she was there. Very creepy stuff, Bill. So yeah, and seeing a ghost, broad daylight. There's the little granny with the kids. Where'd she go to? Poof. Disappeared. Did it seem to you like the kids knew she was there?
They were oblivious, as kids usually are.
Yeah.
They didn't even know. They didn't look back for her or anything.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was watching the kids come in. She was behind all of them. But as soon as I saw the 10-year-old come in, I looked out the door. It's time for me to go out. But where's the woman? She wasn't there.
Wow. That's just so weird. And this kind of stuff happens to people all the time, and everybody just blows it off and goes, oh, you're just imagining things. Well, why was I just imagining something that particular moment when I never usually imagine anything like that otherwise? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the same thing with people that see cryptids and stuff. Well, you were just imagining it. Well, I got a picture of what I was imagining. You want to see the picture? Kind of stops that troll behavior dead in its tracks. Here's a picture of what I was imagining. I got a friend up in Canada that likes to do that to park rangers. He'll go walk in the park and check it out all day, and then he'll come out and, hey, you guys ever get any reports? Anything unusual from around here? Like what? Oh, like Sasquatch? Or no, there's no such thing as Sasquatch. No, we don't get any. What do you mean there's no such thing as Sasquatch? There's no Sasquatch. Yeah, there are. No, there aren't. Oh, you want to see some pictures of them I got in your park today? That really irritates them. Yeah, my one friend has actually been thrown out of the Algonquin Park Visitor Center twice for doing that.
Wow.
Yeah, the park rangers get really upset when you show them pictures of things that don't exist and aren't supposed to be in their park, and they don't want to admit it. As it turns out, they find that upsetting.
There is an organization of Bigfoot field researchers in the USA and Canada, whose acronym is the BFRO. The BFRO goes on field expeditions in search of Bigfoot, which is sometimes referred to as Sasquatch. Its members recently conducted interviews with witnesses in the area of Whitehall, New York, in addition to visiting in person the hotspot locations where evidence of Sasquatch leads them. When some hear the name of New York mentioned, most think of a city, a metropolis, where no trees are to be seen outside of Central Park. However, in the upper state of New York, among the hills of the Adirondacks, there are few houses and few people to be seen. A lonely ribbon of highway pierces the Adirondack forest. There is no street to walk on. The only travelers here are in automobiles. And if one is unlucky enough to be on foot, the passing cars would be few and far between. The sparsely populated village of Whitehall is one of the few inhabited towns in the wilderness of upstate. The Bigfoot field expedition arrived in town in September of 2005. The researchers of the BFRO interviewed an eyewitness whose name was Henry. Since childhood, Henry had worked on the family farm, a Christmas tree farm. Throughout his 30 years, he had occasionally seen footprints in the oldest section of the farm, the farthest part of the family's property, that area nearest the wood's edge. There stood the taller, older pine trees used for grafting. The footprints occurred only rarely, but they were always large. 20 inches, the one time that Henry measured. The footprints were always accompanied by broken branches, as if disturbed by something passing. The partly severed branches would swing in the wind, as high overhead as 10 feet, marking a trail leading into the forest. But that way lay only the mountains, uninhabited by men. A young couple in the year 2000 were hiking on the trail to Buck Mountain, the peak of which can be seen from Whitehall. The young woman was a model, and she wanted some nature shots for her portfolio. John and his girlfriend headed off trail, and they came to running water. Before the young man could remove the lens cap from his camera, they heard a deep roaring sound like that of a large mammal. John was a backpacker, familiar with all manner of animal noises. This particular cry he had never before heard, sounding like a combination of a growl and a scream. He was scared. He guided his girlfriend back toward the trail. The blood-curdling scream was repeated and getting closer. Then they heard rapid footfalls nearby, crunching through the dry, dead leaves covering the ground. Suddenly, John realized it was trying to circle them. The trail was upon them, and they broke into a run in the direction of the trailhead. This was the longest 15 minutes of their lives, because although the creature no longer cried out, they could hear it pacing them, just out of sight, in the woods on their left side, until they reached their automobile, locking themselves in. Human encounters with a colony of Sasquatch in Whitehall began as early as 1759. In the same area, English colonies were at war with French colonies. The British military detachment of Rogers Rangers and their American Indian allies both reported Sasquatch. On one march in the wilderness, the Rangers were pelted with rocks and stones by what they described as large, hairy primates, to which they gave a name: mountain apes. The mountain apes were driven away by the soldiers with a single volley of musket fire. Iroquois Indians loyal to the English related tribal accounts, perhaps old as millennia. They describe a creature which guards its own land, a creature which tosses large pine cones at trespassers. Its Iroquois name is the Slippery One, because it is smart enough to avoid the traps of men. A local researcher, Paul Bartholomew, has proposed to the town board of Whitehall a resolution making it illegal to hunt or shoot Sasquatch in the rural New York region of upstate.
So, what's your plan for the future here with Night Terrors as you're continuing on with building your mighty empire of cool paranormal stories?
Well, I'm really trying to get those new subs at the Night Terrors channel on YouTube. I think I'm going to have to start advertising.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anybody that's doing that tactic. Of course, I mean that would seem like it would be the thing to do, assuming it actually
On
works.
the internet these days, if you look hard enough, there's you can always find a real cheap place to advertise.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. I'd like to see your channel be very successful because you do such a great job with it, and it's so entertaining. And there's, I really fairly, out of all the gazillion shows that I know about, I have a fairly limited list of ones that I'm actually excited to see. And, Bill found out the other night, I'm sitting there editing my show for Sunday. It's Saturday night. Bill's live streaming. I'm like, oh, I got to go watch Bill's show for a little bit. I'm going to play hooky. Hey, I'm taking a break from editing. How you guys doing? And it was totally worth it. I'm glad I took a break from editing and played hooky.
Thank you.
Finished it off anyway. Needed some inspiration. Need to watch something else that's good and entertaining. Good and entertaining, and that's the combination. It's not just entertaining, but it's also insightful, informative, and interesting. The three eyes. The three eyes of Night Terrors. Not only a paragon of perspicacity, but also the excellence of elocution. Bill Madon, Night Terrors. I'm picking on you, Bill. You know it's because you're not talking enough. You're being interviewed. You got to talk more. So I'm going to start.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So was there anything that you wanted to let people know about your channel, and why would they want to come over and sub you? What would you tell them?
We do all kinds of spooky stories. We do conspiracy theories, time travel, parallel universes, cryptids, Bigfoot, you name it.
Right on. Yes, you do. And that's one of the things I love about your channel, because it's variety.
Right.
You'll really cover a subject in depth, and then you'll be like, oh, I wonder what he's going to cover next time. It'll be something completely different. It's like Monty Python going, no, something completely different, and it is going to be something completely different every time. And, geez, I can't even remember the last time you turned out a show that I didn't find to be interesting. You're really good at picking topics. Do you get topics just off the top of your head, or do you have viewers send them in, or where do you get ideas for that?
About half of the time, there are viewer suggestions. And the other half, I look and see what other channels are doing and what they're having success with.
Right. Yeah, there's some things that are, Time-sensitive topics, they'll be like really popular for a couple months, and then it'll just kind of fade away. Everybody loses interest in it for whatever reason. So that is kind of a good tactic, because as long as other channels are getting people's attention to it, why not do your version of it? Because inevitably, you usually do a better version than they're doing anyway.
Thank you.
Well, so I keep watching your channel. Often I have hosts of other channels on my show to talk to, like not very often.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Unless there's some, like Jimmy Church from Fade to Black, or Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, or something like that. And again, they're doing the same thing that you're doing. They're covering these sort of topics. They have the guests on to talk about it. They do a really good job on it. And the one thing that sets those two guys apart for radio show hosts is that they both do field research. They'll actually get out there in the field and do the research themselves too, which really impresses me. I love that. When the show hosts themselves have actually had some of these experiences, they get such a better interview out of their guests when they talk to them, because they've experienced some of the same stuff, so they know what questions to ask. They're like, hey, when I was there, this is what I felt like. And the guest's like, oh, hell yeah. That's exactly how I felt too. Plus, wish I had my Depends undergarments on in a much faster car. But other than that, you nailed it.
Evidence of an ancient race of men with heads like dogs is attested by multiple historians. The accounts of explorers and the artwork of cartographers. Who were the dog men? Where could they be found? How did they vanish from the face of the earth? And what are the odds that members of this tribe have survived until the present day? In Egypt, the most monolithic civilization of old, no less than 3 gods were represented as a human being with the head of a dog: Duamutef and Wepwawat, 2 gods of war, and Anubis, ruler of the dead. Was the Egyptian artwork depicting members of a race which at one time coexisted with man? Reports of this race begin in Greece. The Greek physician Ctesias, in a geographical treatise, wrote that in the mountains of India there live men with dog heads, known as the Cynocephaly, whose territory extends as far as the river Indus. They can understand language, but they have no ability to speak. They communicate with each other by barking like dogs. Their population numbered over 100,000. The Cynocephaly produce amber and purple dye, large quantities of which they presented as annual tribute to the King of India. They do not live in houses, but in caves under the earth. 8 centuries earlier, according to oral history, the Argonauts of Greece waged battle against the half-dog tribe at a place which today is located in Serbia. Their location in this area is independently confirmed by Serbian oral tradition, which speaks of the creature Zagrov having a human body and a canine's head with teeth of iron. Zaglavs were said to live in a dark land with an abundance of gemstones, but no sun. In other words, in caves. The most famous of the dogmen is Saint Christopher, who appears in several Christian texts and many examples of religious art. Prior to his conversion, Christopher was said to have been a savage and ferocious soldier, captured in battle on the eastern coast of Libya. He was a large man with the head of a hound, from a clan of warriors. After meeting Jesus, he repented and was baptized, eventually receiving sainthood, and occasionally granted the honor of being represented with a human face in later iconic art. A Chinese historian, Li Yanshu of the Tang Dynasty, mentions a dog kingdom. And during the Liang Dynasty of China, the Buddhist missionary Hu Sheng describes an island of dog-headed men to the east of Fusang, a nation he himself visited, which has since been identified as Japan. In one story of King Arthur, his men are caught in a skirmish with dog-headed warriors in the mountains of Edinburgh. Hundreds of them fall under the sword of the English knight, Bedivere. The famous explorer, Marco Polo, wrote of his journey to the Andaman Islands, off the coast of India. He recounts his meeting with barbarian men with heads like hounds, going so far as to identify the breed as Mastiff. They grew their own spices, which they were willing to trade. They displayed a primitive form of organized religion and worshipped oxen. From their necks hung religious charms, hammered from pieces of silver and gold. We can guess what may have happened to this fierce but minority race. As the empires of men expanded, the half-dogs were exterminated. The evidence suggests they were a proud and aggressive tribe, which would have much preferred to die in battle rather than be assimilated into human culture. However, if self-destructive humankind relinquishes its claim to rule the earth, the cynocephaly may once more arise from their caves.
So yeah, that's fun. You know, I actually am planning on trying to get Jimmy Church back here again soon, because he just recently did a trip over to the Middle East and spent some time in Egypt, and then when he came back, he did a whole show on why he thinks the Great Pyramids weren't built by the Egyptians, which is a page that I've been on for a long time. So I think I'm going to have Jimmy on, and we're going to talk about, hey, why were the Great Pyramids not made by the Egyptians? And is Zahi Hawass the biggest con artist on Earth? Well, you don't have to answer that one. You know what I'm talking about, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Captain Cover-Up.
He has an official title over there. He's like head of their Egyptology department.
Head of their Department of Antiquities and Cover-Ups. Right. He not only unearths things, he buries them back up again. If Indiana Jones was a real person in the real world, this would be one of his arch enemies. Okay, so for anybody who hasn't figured it out yet. Allegedly. Throwing the salty crackerism there. Allegedly. He's a big copycat. Allegedly does tons of cover-ups. Allegedly we have video of him crawling in the secret hatch at the top of the Great Sphinx. And in the back of the Great Sphinx, and the removable stone that's next to his ear. Let's not talk about that. Okay, Zahi. Allegedly. So what's your favorite subject from antiquity? I know you cover all sorts of different subjects related to that. What's the most baffling thing from antiquity that really gets your attention? That's, you know, and I just threw out the Great Pyramid, so you can't use that.
The how about the is it the Antikythera mechanism or something like that?
Yeah, the Antikythera mechanism. That is really strange because of how precise that thing is made and the time period they're attributing it to. Who had all this precise information and could actually make a mechanism that complicated?
I'm amazed at how they backwards engineered the functions of it.
Yeah, well, even, you know, that was like, geez, it took them a couple years to actually take that thing apart without breaking it. It was just a big lump of rust, and they had to leave it sitting in this vat of solution and slowly pull apart piece after piece of it and document where it was sitting, what it was doing, and and then put it all together again in a computer, 3D. Here's all the cogwheels. they're spinning, what are they doing? You know, how often are these cycles happening and stuff? And they started going, oh my God, this thing's like a calendar. You know, they had all kinds of weird stuff programmed into it. And we expect that from the mechanical capabilities from like 17th, 18th, 19th century, but you don't expect it from something like 3,000 years ago.
Right.
Just bizarre. And that goes along with some of the other stuff, especially like the old stuff from China and stuff. I was just watching a thing the other night where they had a machine that would predict earthquakes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With the mercury.
You see that? Yeah. And this one, it would look, I guess it was about like a little bit bigger than a refrigerator or something, kind of bell-shaped, and it had dragons with a ball in their mouth. And when an earthquake would happen, the dragon, in the direction the earthquake was happening, would drop the ball into this little divot.
Right.
Which would tell you there's an earthquake happening over there. And fortuitously, when the guy was premiering this in front of the emperor going, hey, I built an earthquake detector, it went off. And 3 days later, they got a runner from that province over in that direction going, hey, we had an earthquake over here 3 days ago. About what time? Right when this guy was here with his machine. So he got the contract. Good timing. That's why the machine's still around, because, yeah, the emperor was very impressed. Hey, this thing actually works, you know. But again, with this limited, supposedly low level of technology that they supposedly had, how do you figure out things like this?
Like what?
Well, like, you know, that there's going to be a seismic effect from an earthquake so far away that you can't feel it.
Lost knowledge is all I can say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. It all points to that there used to be much higher, more technologically advanced cultures that were building and making some of this stuff that our modern quote unquote historians don't want to admit to.
Right.
Another thing is the history in North America with well, humans have only been over here since the last ice age. Well, they just disproved that. They found those tracks down in New Mexico that were 23,000 years ago.
Right.
Well, so humans were here at least 23,000 years ago. How long ago were they really here?
Yeah.
You know, so we already pushed it back twice as far as what academic science is saying we were here, and it was probably a lot longer. And then you got the Clovis points over there on your side of the country that they found, which are identical to the ones that were made in Europe.
Right.
Well, how the hell did they get over here? Cavemen came over here on little reed rafts. We do know that 2 ice ages ago, the North Atlantic was completely frozen over, and so were the British Isles and parts of Northern Europe. So you can assume people that were into fishing at that point were doing it the same way that the Eskimos are still doing it to this day. You get out in your little boat, your little kayak, and you go catch some fish, and then you go back to the edge of the ice sheet, and you make your igloo, and you stay there overnight. And you never have to go to shore. You can always be on the ice sheet. Well, what happens when they go far enough west, they run into where the other continent is. They don't know the continent there. They're just following the ice sheet fishing. Hey, there's land over here. Cool. And that's, you know, it makes sense because if you think about it, that's how old those Clovis points are. They're from 2 ice ages ago.
Oh, yeah.
And the Clovis culture started on the East Coast and went west. They weren't coming over Siberia to get here.
Right.
So, again, more glaring peculiarities in the accepted story of history of North America. What's your favorite one?
For North America? I like the idea of the burial mounds. I wish they would dig 1 or 2 of those up.
Oh, you're talking about the mound builders around Mississippi and stuff? Yeah, they've actually been digging. They've dug those up a bunch of times. You usually end up finding giant skeletons, and then the helpful people from the Smithsonian show up and take them away for further study.
Right.
And there's a book called Giants in North America by Dewhurst, where he shows 150 pages of newspaper articles that all end the same way. And some of them have pictures of the remains and, you know, whatnot. And, oh, yeah, we dug it up. It measured this big, blah, 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 blah. And then the very helpful people from the Smithsonian showed up and took the remains away for further study, at which point they disappeared forever. You know, and this is, like I said, 150 pages of this. It was by no means all that he could have dug up and put in there. Right. Like, how much do you need to whip a dead horse? Exactly. It was common knowledge that there used to be giants here in North America. All of a sudden, there was no giants in North America. There's even a story of during the Revolutionary War, Washington's troops had to build emplacements and stuff. And while they were digging, they dug up giant skeletons.
Wow.
just as a consequence of we need to make trenches to hide it, dig, dig, dig. Hey, there's giant skeletons in here. What?
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, it was that common knowledge up until, and you can see right where it happened, the Powell Doctrine from the Smithsonian. That's when they put the clamps on it. Anything that came out after that, nope, no giants, go collect those skeletons up. You guys were just,
right.
Your tape measures are broken or something. You can't measure right,
Right.
Never forget it doesn't matter that was a forensic scientist, the local mortician that examined the bones thoroughly and measured every single thing and even got a picture of it. The picture's totally flawed. That guy doesn't know anything.
When the township of Celle was captured by the Americans in 1945, they also occupied the German military headquarters, a colossal brick building whose basement held a secret war weapon. But they did not secure this weapon. Instead, they sealed off the basement, filling the stairwells with concrete. In this Nazi occult documentary, what they had found will be revealed. Functioning today as the Rathaus, or Town Hall of Celle, the headquarters building had always been used as a military barracks. In 1869, it was built for the Prussian army, with 5 stories above ground and 5 more below ground level. Before the end of the Second World War, it was occupied by the SS. Anticipating the arrival of the American army, the SS deliberately flooded the lower levels of the Rathaus. When the last German officer had been removed, 3 divers from the US Navy were detached for the mission of exploring the submerged levels of the building. This was before the US Navy adopted scuba gear. A US Navy diver would have used a diving suit known as a hard hat. While scuba gear carries oxygen for up to an hour, hard hat gear is tethered to the surface with a lifeline known as the umbilical. The umbilical provides an unlimited supply of air and the power to light a lamp or to run tools, and a communications cable allowing the diver to talk with his support topside. The divers explored the 5 levels underwater, each one colder than the one above. They observed floors painted in black with pentagrams and Latin inscriptions. Runic symbols were scratched into the walls. The rooms they explored bore a superficial resemblance to hospital facilities, operating theaters, and hospital beds. But on closer inspection, all the beds and operating tables had extra fittings. Leather straps with buckles for the restraint of a man's arms, legs, and torso, as if all the patients had been unwilling participants in their treatment. Their umbilicals somehow severed. 2 of the divers never returned to the surface. The Yanks tried to pump out the cellar, but for every gallon removed, another rushed in to take its place. The SS had evidently flooded the lower levels by breaching one of the walls in order to tap the water table. The Americans used concrete to seal off the stairwells. When Germany was divided into zones between the Allied nations, the town of Celle would become English territory, and the Rathaus was turned over to the Brits. The British continued to garrison troops there throughout the Cold War. It seemed that the Rathaus was cursed. The frequency of its soldiers going AWOL or completely disappearing was the highest of any station in the British Army. Lance Corporal Jonathan Lewis was on night watch in an armory on the 1st floor, which was so small that he could see all 4 corners, when the specter of a man emerged from the wall. As the man materialized fully, he was followed by another and another. Their uniforms were gray, and one of them wore an iron cross. They were German soldiers. Lewis was close enough to see the grime in the lines of their faces. They shuffled in single file across the room, staring only ahead, as if exhausted by battle fatigue. They passed through the opposite wall, a defeated platoon on its way to some other part of hell. In 2012, excerpts were published from a diary of a German doctor, Heinrich Haas, who during the war worked in the lowest level of the Zelle Neues Rathaus. Dr. Haas claimed that the SS were using powers of the occult. First, to reanimate the cadavers of prisoners, and then to restore to life the casualties of war. Their ultimate goal was the creation of troops which would continue to fight, even after their souls had perished in battle. But according to Heinrich Haas, the experiments failed. The revived soldiers could not be controlled, and often struck out against the medical staff. The SS program was terminated when the commander determined that demons had been possessing as vessels the bodies of the deceased.
Sure. And again, this comes up with what we were talking about earlier with the supposedly the ancient origin point of the Hopi in the Grand Canyon there, because they talk about when they got in there, they found all kinds of remains of giants and stuff, and some of them even like mummified, sitting up on thrones and stuff that were 15 feet tall or whatever. And this isn't very far from the the Legend of Lovelock Cave with the giants there. Princess Winnemucca's story.
Giants.
Yep, the Paiutes had a war with them. There's a lot more information on that than you generally hear. That war was actually going on for a couple of years.
Okay.
And they claimed to have wiped out several thousand of the giants. The incident with the cave is when they were down to just the last few, and they went and hid in this cave on the far side of this lake to avoid being massacred. And the natives figured out where they were and showed up and went, "Hey, we knew that you were living on these rafts out on the island for the last year. They built giant rafts like a raft island and were living out on the lake for about the last year they were there. And they finally decided to go to the far side of the lake and come out to where this cave was. And then at which point the natives realized they were there and went, okay, here's the deal. If you quit eating us, we'll quit killing you." And they went, no deal. The natives went, okay, now we're going to burn you alive.
Right.
Been nice knowing you. See you later, giant asshole cannibals. And yeah, that was the whole Lovelock Cave thing right there. So again, same area, you've got these tales of these giants and stuff. And that's also the same description as the Kandahar giant, red hair, 15 feet tall. You occasionally do get reports of people seeing these things still here in North America. And they get covered up really fast. And generally, wherever they were seen gets shut down temporarily, and there's military presence, and then it gets opened up again. This just happened in Colorado about a month ago. So what's up with that? They all living underground, showing up every so often? Don't know. Coming through portals? Don't know. Just don't know. But you get eyewitness reports of it and stuff. And this was on one of the channels on YouTube. The day before he released this report that he had got, I actually got a phone call from somebody on the opposite side of the country that had a relative that was involved on the ground in what was going on. And he told me pretty much exactly the same thing that this guy reported on his channel the next day.
Wow.
With a few more details. So I went and took a look at it, and sure enough, park in question presently closed for some odd reason. And then 2 days later, the park was open again. Okay, what? Everybody has to leave the park for 3 days. Why? We're not telling you. Okay, you guys can all go back now. Why did you have to leave? We're not telling you. Little suspicious, guys. It's a little bit suspicious.
Just a little.
Yeah, during the summer, let's close down a whole huge park for few days for no good reason. Not tell anybody why. Must have been wildfires or something. Although there was no report.
The ancients believed in monsters of the deep, serpents hiding under the waves, threatening to capsize the heavy, crawling ships of men. Today, there is no ocean nor lake that has not been probed and found wanting for sea monsters. Except for the freshwater lakes buried beneath the ice of Antarctica. There is a hidden continent under the ice cap of Antarctica. Ground-penetrating radar established the existence of hundreds of lakes on this continent. Because of pressure exerted by the ice, these lakes are not frozen, they are liquid, containing fresh water that has been isolated for at least 15 million years. The largest of these is Lake Vostok, covered by a glacier 2 miles thick. On top of the ice sits the Russian Vostok Research Station. It took 10 years for the Soviets to drill a vertical tunnel in the ice, in which a special elevator was built, designed to hold a single man. In 2012, the elliptical drill bit finally reached down to the eastern shore of the lake. A team of 8 scientists was lowered to the original surface of the continent, 1 man at a time. What followed was a closely guarded state secret, until a Russian scientist defected to the West. Dr. Anton Padalka was a member of the Soviet research team. He became a defector after learning his government had military plans for a discovery made in Antarctica. Granted sanctuary in Switzerland, Dr. Padalka disclosed the existence of a life form native to Lake Vostok, a strange and lethal creature, designated as Organism 46B. During a scuba dive, for which they required low-temperature wetsuits, the creature was encountered on day 1 of the expedition. Organism 46B is a species of giant octopus, but with 14 arms instead of 8. It shares traits of its nearest known relative, Vitrellidinella ricardi, the glass octopus, which kills by paralyzing its prey with venom, then seizes and dismembers the victim, cutting it into bits with a powerful beak. But 46B can do one thing that its smaller cousin cannot. It can paralyze from a distance of 150 feet, because its venom is contained in the sac that is normally used for expelling ink. Expedition member Alexis Vinogradov, the radio operator, was killed in this way, and the radio was lost. Like the mimic octopus of the Indo-Pacific, 46B has remarkable powers of camouflage. The mimic physically changes its form to resemble one of 15 other aquatic species, such as a lionfish, or a sea snake, or a jellyfish. Again, Organism 46B takes this ability one step further. Dr. Padalka witnessed the creature in the shape of a human diver. They thought it was a member of the team swimming toward them. The scientist nearest to the creature, a marine biologist, became the second researcher to lose his life when the organism resumed its shape and ripped him to pieces. At this point, the expedition chief, A.M. Yelagin, decided to use a specimen tank to capture the organism. The only female member of the team, Dr. Marta Kalishnik, was used to lure 46B, not because of her sex, but because as a former professional athlete, she was judged best able to defend herself. The trap was a success, but one of the sea creature's arms did attack her. Kalishnik was forced to use her axe, completely severing the limb. According to Dr. Padalka, when the man-eater was brought to the surface, it was confiscated immediately by Soviet security. The international press was told nothing was found. The entrance to the hole was plugged. Russian President Vladimir Putin now intends to weaponize the venom of the prehistoric beast.
Well, anyway, Bill, we're at about an hour here. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about as long as you're on here?
I'd just like to invite all your viewers to see me at the Night Terrors channel on YouTube.
Well, absolutely, and I encourage you all to do the same. Trust me, although Bill is not big on talking on this show, he's really good at talking on his show.
It's mostly talking.
It's mostly talking, and he is very good at reading all of the reports and stories and whatnot that he has before him. Again, his excellence of elocution comes through continuously because of his perfect pronunciation. One wonders at times whether he's actually a native English speaker or if he was trained in English before they dropped him off on this planet.
Thank you, Duke.
Sorry, Bill. I had to pick on you a little bit about that. That's actually been a running joke with me and several of my friends for a while now because your English is so good when you're on air. And if you actually screw something up, you're always like, you get mad at yourself because you said one word wrong.
That I do.
So, yeah, we really enjoy it. And, you know, that's, again, a mark of a good broadcaster, which I am not necessarily. I'm good at talking, but I don't have the excellence of elocution that Bill possesses. So you must go to his channel. You must soak it in. You must enjoy the excellence as Bill will present it to you. Plus the pulse-pounding perspicacity as he whips out words that you may be entirely unacquainted with and have to actually go look up in order to know what it is that he's referencing. Anyway, Bill, it's been just a blast having you here with me. If you ever want to come back on the show and share anything with us, I would be more than happy to have you back again. If you ever want to do a show where you talk about Bigfoot, hey, I'll come on your show. I got plenty of video too.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. And for everybody else, thank you for tuning into the show. Like I said, and this has been pretty much a commercial for Bill's channel all the way through because he really deserves it. He does a great job all the time. Go on over, check out his channel, sub him. Watch his stuff. You will not be disappointed. It's always good, high quality all the way, and does very, very good job on researching the content that he's talking about. So with that, you all know the drill. Make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.